Jim and Jessica Rollins and their children had not been home to the United States for 18 months. They decided to take their vacation in Southeast Asia the last time, and quite frankly, the trip wasn't a great one. Ryan, their oldest, stepped on a shard of glass and required stitches. Ella Ruth, their second child, got caught in a riptide and nearly drowned. And Sammy, the youngest, well, he got lost in the Bangkok night market and didn't even realize it. His mother about had a heart attack. So when in early October, Jim announced, "We're going home," the family cheered. Jessica looked across the table at her husband, and with her eyes, she said, "You are the best husband ever." Of course, the next day, when Jim went to book the tickets online, it was just awful. It seems that everyone in Hanoi was online to book tickets at the same time. What started as a simple search of various airline websites turned into a huge hassle. Seemingly every flight departing Hanoi 2 weeks leading up to Christmas, they were all booked. And when Jim did find seats for 5, the announcement flickered, "Hurry and buy now. These are the last 5 seats available." Well, by the time Jim filled in all the boxes and added his credit card information and clicked book tickets, the screen went blank for a moment, and then another notice popped up saying, "I'm sorry, there are no tickets available, no seats on this flight. Please try again." And after that happened a few more times, Jim gave up. He began looking for separate bookings. After 5 hours, 4 cups of coffee, 3 outbursts of anger, 2 long prayers, and a partridge in a pear tree, Jim and the boys were finally booked. Hanoi, Hong Kong, LA, Chicago, Cincinnati, and finally Atlanta. And Jessica and Ella Ruth, they were booked also. Hanoi, Dubai, Paris, Amsterdam, Washington, D.C., Atlanta. The total trip times were unbelievable. Jim and the boys would be traveling 42 hours, and Jessica and Ella Ruth weren't much better. Their travel time was 36 hours. The actual travel home was, well, a nightmare. Jim and the boys caught a taxi to, well, you know, that airport, with just enough time to spare. Jim was notorious for cutting it close. But this time, on the Nuptan Bridge, their taxi Jim and the boys ended up arriving at the airport 45 minutes before their flight was scheduled to depart. Jim was sweating it, as you can imagine. The boys were blissfully unaware. They traveled through Hong Kong with little trouble, without even a hitch, and when they arrived in LA, they learned of a winter storm that was paralyzing the Midwest. They saw this on the news.
U.S. airlines have canceled more than 1,000 flights, while at least 3,000 are delayed as a winter storm continues through the East Coast. On Tuesday morning, about 200 flights have been canceled at Chicago O'Hare, where more than 1,300 flights were canceled on Monday.
"Ugh," Jim said. Oh. Before they realized it, all the hotels within a 5-mile radius of the airport in LA, they were already booked. The boys and Jim spent 18 hours listening to that, wandering around an airport, looking for a seat and sleeping on cold, hard floors. It was awful. Finally, they managed to board their flight. Jessica and Ella Ruth didn't fare much better. They ended up stuck in Paris 1 full day, well, 23 and a half hours to be exact. Some hacker apparently broke into the Air France computer system, and this is all that appeared on any monitor that was connected to Air France. Ella Ruth, who had been studying French at Concordia, she knew exactly what it said. Joy X Noel, she said. I've been studying French. Her mom looked at her and said, I don't think so. They actually were going nowhere. And then they heard this.
Mesdames et messieurs, tous les vols ont été annulés jusqu'à nouvel ordre. Mesdames et messieurs, tous les vols ont été annulés jusqu'à nouvel ordre.
They weren't exactly sure what it meant, but they quickly realized that their flights were canceled. Thankfully, Jim and Jessica were able to keep in touch. They had their cell phones. While waiting in the LA airport, Jim found an airline magazine. Someone had left it on an empty seat, and he had nothing else to do. He opened it up and began to read it. He found an article entitled, The Lights of Home. The last paragraph of that story. In the face of the chilling wind, the husband again wrapped the blanket around his wife and 3-year-old son. They had been traveling between worlds, Egypt and Palestine. Now, in the midst of the night, they finally arrived outside of the house, their house. There they saw a small clay oil lamp on the table. My mother must be waiting for us, the husband thought. The lamplight was pure. No smoking, no flickering. Just a soft, steady, warming light that spilled out of the open window and seemed to say, welcome. We are home, the husband said to his wife with a sigh. The wife smiled wearily, and the child slept on. Another gust of wind blew, as if it was trying to prevent the Holy Family from entering their Nazareth home. The couple shivered as they pushed through the stubborn door. Soon the stone room was echoing with joyous cries, "You're home! Welcome! Ahlan wa sahlan!" The husband smiled. The mother, tired though she was, she laughed and cried at the same time. And the young boy continued sleeping peacefully. Surprisingly, Jim and Jessica, they arrived in Atlanta within, 90 minutes of each other. Sadly, 2 of their bags didn't make it. And you guessed it, all their Christmas presents were inside. The exhausted family trudged to the Alamo rental counter to pick up their car. As they approached, Jim noticed the words, "Relax, vacation, travel, adventure, fun." He nudged his wife, pointing to the sign. She said, "Not funny." Because they were late, they had to take whatever car was available, a bright yellow Suburban. "It certainly is big enough," Jessica mocked. "Yeah, it's like a big yellow banana, Dad," Ryan, the oldest, said with weary enthusiasm. It began to rain. As they pulled out of Hartsfield Airport, Jim watched the wipers, he switched them on, and they began to sing their weary song, thump, 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 thump. Jim and Jessica, although tired, began to share about their travel misadventures. Before long, the children were asleep on the back seat. Or as Jim said, the children are nestled all snug in their bed. Soon the car was quiet, for Jessica, too, had fallen asleep, almost mid-sentence. And there was Jim, driving in the dark, driving toward home. He began to think about that article that he had read in the LA airport. The lights of home, he thought, as he reached for the radio, turned it on.
I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me.
Jim sang the song he knew so well.
Please have snow and mistletoe and presents.
Tears misted in his eyes. Jim wasn't exactly sure where the time went, but without even realizing it, he found himself driving down the street that he knew so well, his street, the street where he grew up. And there, just as he remembered, was his house. A house awash with light, Christmas light. Jim turned the big yellow Suburban into his driveway, and just as he did, Jessica awoke. The car came to a stop. Jim's parents bounding down the steps to greet the weary
You
traveler.
made it! Welcome home. It's so good to see you.
That's what Jim's mom said. And that's what Jim felt. Jim smiled. Jessica laughed and cried at the same time. And the children, they slept right on through. Merry Christmas.